Well, whoops, ironing. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is when I want to deal with the stupid stuff, the drama and rant and all that kind of thing, I'll just go live. It does go private after, so I have to remember to switch it over to public when I'm done. It's public while I'm live. That's the way YouTube's set up. So it's public now. Nobody's here yet, but I'll repeat what I'm saying if somebody show. Well, now somebody has pushed a like on it, so somebody likes it, but nobody's here. Oh, there's the person. I guess there's a delay in the counting. Whoever you are, thank you for liking it. If I push chat, I can see live chat. Okay. All right. Anyway, I think what I'm going to do is when I want to rant or deal with troll drama or whatever, I'll go live. And then I know that it will sort of drop into a private status after I end the stream. And I can republish it, republicize it, republish it afterwards. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so for the benefit of people who show up later, my name's Denise Matteau. Welcome. Oh, we've got 2 people. Welcome, whoever, wherever, whenever you are. Thank you for showing up. Hope you stay a while. Please subscribe, like, and share. Now, I was just saying, when I feel like I have to deal with something and I should just ignore it, but at the same time, some of this stuff is too serious to really ignore. It has to be. And because I know that some of these trolls, a small handful of them, are not just people with a rather nasty hobby of fooling around online. Some of them are serious, and they're going to bother me even if I'm not online. So I have to talk about what they're doing because they're trying to do real harm. And when I say they, I'm using the phrase loosely because it's mainly one female at this point. But she is a member of a gang. And it's an extortion ring. And then when I'm doing my craft work and stuff, that's going to be videos that I upload. And those generally will have, and this one too is, you don't have permission to share this, okay? I'm sick of these people, but it's like, yeah, they know that I don't really want to invest my time in chasing them around. But I do have all rights reserved on my videos. Anyway, what's going on? Okay. Apparently, the troll grift with Terry Joyce Randolph, Terry Randolph, she uses all 3 forms now. I think she's calling herself Terry Randolph when she's publishing her work in California as a so-called journalist. There were air quotes there for the benefit of those who are just listening. And Terry Joyce is her adult media social comedy routine brand. And I think Terry Joyce Randolph, I think that is actually her legal name. So those are the 3 forms. And it's interesting to see, I know this gang that she's with goes back quite a few years and has involved some pretty nasty stuff up in Massachusetts. But it's been across, it's a transnational thing where there's been this extortion ring going on, and it was known at one point as the Satanic Panic. You might remember that, some of you. Back in the 1980s, way back then, there was a man named Dale Griffiths who was an author of a book who claimed to have been a police chief in Tiffin, Ohio. In fact, he was never a police chief. They said that, yeah, he had actually been a streetcar, regular uniform. He wore a police uniform at one point in his life, but he was never even up to detective level. They said, They disavowed him totally. But he used to claim to have been a police chief. He wrote, I forget what the title of his book was, but it was one of the original Satanic Panic books back in the 1980s. And it was, he did a lot of he messed around a lot with the Tennessee murder case, the Memphis Three, where three teenage boys were convicted but eventually pardoned after they had served time in a horrific murder of a little boy. And I'm not saying there was no merit to the things Dale Griffiths was saying about, say, the rise, the emergence and rise of an actual satanic religious movement in the United States. But he was a grifter. He was running with a lot of sensationalism, and he was an former police officer. I won't say ex because that indicates people got fired. He was a police officer, probably in good standing. Then he went into this lecture circuit thing of traveling around the country, lecturing on satanic crimes. But he was very unprofessional. He was, he was messing up cases. He would go into a place where there was an open case, like when the Memphis 3 case was still under investigation, and basically totally screw up the witness pool, the jury pool. He would create bad publicity. He would compromise testimony by getting the people in the community where the crime happened. He would pull them into discussions and making public statements and so on, while the case was still young, while it was just, they still didn't even know what they were looking at. And you have to be very careful not to cross-contaminate testimony in crimes, in cases, in court cases. So we're talking about the 1980s, right? Well, and a book publisher, an author of a book that was published. And my awareness of Dale Griffiths came because he became interested in a Massachusetts case where a 12-year-old named James Bernardo was murdered as part of a satanic ritual. That happened in 1988. 12 years old. My daughter was also 12. She was in the same circle of kids from which Bernardo was kidnapped. He was kidnapped in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, taken to Newburgh, New York, that's upstate New York, and murdered there. Approximately Halloween, they found his body a month later, and dating was problematic because in the cold, frozen winter, you can't really, it's not an exact science to date the time of death, but it was approximately Halloween. A member of the gang in which Terry Joyce is active right now online is a woman named Colleen Kolkar, who said that she grew up in Newburgh and she would have been a teenager around the time that Bernardo murder happened. And the only reason I know that she said that was she was trolling me alongside another woman that Terry Joyce is talking about today in her live stream, a woman named Tammy Mathis, who used to use the name Winter Moon. Also, like Dale Griffiths, claimed police background she did not have. Tammy Mathis is a mentally ill woman from Indiana who at one point had taken a college course in criminal justice, police work. If she had graduated, she would have gone into a career but she claims she actually quit the course because she just didn't like it. And she said even what she didn't like. And this was in an interview, kind of a conversation, I should say, in a live stream in which a man active in the pedophile catcher community, who used the name Telly, an Australian, decided to question Winter Moon, Tammy Mathis, about her so-called police background. And that's how we found out she was full-on lying. I thought she actually had been in the positions she was in. Hold on just a second. I gotta pause this for a minute. Hold on. Let me just turn this off. Well, I'm sorry about that. Uh, Sorry about that. Well, I got 5 people been patient, haven't you? I need to get some bumper music. And I have to do something. My neighbor needed quarters with a washer. All right, where was I? The Bernardo. Okay. So this is now the thing to bear in mind here is we're talking about these publishing houses. Now this is where Terry Joyce, even though she's obviously, I think she's a couple of IQ points short of the retarded level. And she's in her 60s. She's earned her living telling dirty jokes as a stand-up adult comedian and doing other things in Hollywood reality TV spots. Basically a backlisted, somebody to call on when they've got a position, somebody in that they just haven't got anybody to fill. So she's like a list actress, etc. And she's written scripts for pornography. Hardcore Circus is the actual title of one in which she both wrote the script, or part of it at least, and appeared as in a bit part. It involved circus sex with people of small stature. I mean, it's like, hey, whatever. We all have had interesting lives in different ways, but now she's trying to reinvent herself as a true crime journalist. And she's been harassing me and others because, as I say, she's half retired. After a while, you realize the woman just really doesn't know what's going on. For example, she's calling herself a college-educated journalist. She is in college in California. They will, if you can spell, if you can read and write well enough to sign the tuition application and pay the bills, sign the check, they'll let you in. And so that's where she's studying journalism. And she's yelling and screaming now about this guy that she's been harassing for at least a year, a guy named David Schroeder, who, like Dale Griffiths, is an author, an actual published author of a book about satanic ritual crime. His book was published back in the 2012 or sometime before that, late, early 2000s. Now, he was published by the same publishing company that was associated with Dale Griffiths. Okay. It didn't really have a name, but the same group of people. There's a guy in Massachusetts named Neil Brick who was involved in publishing and selling Dave Schroeder's book. Same guy was involved with Dale Griffiths. Same guy was involved with people around Terry Joyce. Now you see why it's important. You can, if it's just a question of a half-retarded person who used to tell dirty jokes for a living, deciding it's a good idea in retirement to continue their career from a keyboard, you just have to laugh at it and forget about it. But when that person is connected to this business level of investment and publishing, you can't ignore them. I can't ignore them. Now, she's claiming in her live stream today, she's talking about me, along with everything else she's talking about. She's claiming she never actually interviewed me, that I somehow was on her stream. Now, actually, the only reason I even know Terry Joyce in the first place is she had put an entire section of one of my videos on her channel along with a request to talk to me. And at that time, she claimed that this clip was brought to her attention by a woman who was using the name Tamara Wolf. It's not her real name, but that's the YouTube name she was using. And I knew Tamara Wolf right away as a member of the extortion ring that contacts family members that they think are involved in serious crime court cases. And Tamara Wolf contacted me back in 2017 because she thought that I was suing the University of Massachusetts over the 2010 death of my daughter, which was declared a suicide, and I believe it was not a suicide. And the University of Massachusetts definitely did something wrong there because, and I had been interviewed in Boston in 2015 about it when they were looking at UMass having issues with a number of student deaths, different cases, all of which had certain elements in common, which was that the university had a gang issue on campus and was covering it up by declaring all these deaths were suicide or accident or whatever. They were not acknowledging the fact that college students were being approached and intimidated and even killed by an organized gang. So I had spoken about that in 2015. I did not make it a published issue of my public life. I had a channel that in 2017 was selling my quilts, attempting to sell my quilts, and was doing some political commentary because I had got caught up in the whole QAnon thing. I thought QAnon was just an interesting and clever political quiz game, basically. Getting people in, and it did, in fact, system of getting people involved in question riddle solving in order to force people to think about what's going on in politics. And I thought it was very good. I still think it was a good idea. But it went off the rails a little bit, and that's a whole different story. But that's all my channel was involved with, was my quilts and general topics. I did not get involved in discussing crimes. I did not discuss my daughter's case or my case at all until this person I just already mentioned, to my Tammy Mathis, the fake Indiana cop, came into my stream, my chat room. And at that point, I had about 5,000 subscribers, and my chat was maybe 40 or 50 strong. It was very popular at the time. And she came into that chat room along with somebody alongside her who I knew from my daughter's case. A man who had been harassing my daughter when she was still alive, had been sending, when he couldn't find her, he was also going to UMass at the same time she was. He was also studying psychology at UMass. My daughter was in the master's program. She was a graduate student. This guy was an undergrad. He was a veteran, an Army veteran. And he worked for the Boston anti-cult guy, Stephen Hassan, at the time that my daughter was a student. And he was sending me emails demanding that I cooperate with Stephen Hassan's desire to investigate stuff. And he claimed it was they were trying to investigate an agricultural communal group called the 12 Tribes, with some kind of one of those cults where you kind of go off, live off the land and change your name to something sounding Old Testament and all this other stuff. And my daughter was so far from that. My daughter was, she had a good, strong Bible childhood, but she had gone off the rails a little bit herself. I won't say off the rails. I mean, she got involved because she was living in Massachusetts, and she was involved with people who were doing Wicca and all this stuff. And she herself, with my blessing, had studied yoga and understood a lot about different religions. But one thing she was not sympathetic to at all was the satanic crap. And she was studying psychology. And somehow or other, the focus, I'm kind of not wanting to discuss some other background, which was that because of my openness to other religions and the fact that for a variety of perfectly common sense reasons, I didn't get along with certain members of my family, a big family, all kinds of people in it. And one of my relatives was a bit of a control freak, narcissistic mental disorder, hired Steve Hassan to harass me when my daughter was still very young and was too young to know what was going on. And I eventually decided to leave Massachusetts for Texas just to get away from the whole mess, particularly when I'm going to return to the question of Dale Griffiths and what happened there with those books. Because we're covering the late 20th century. My daughter was born in 1976. Bernardo was killed in 1988. Dale Griffiths was active mostly in the 1990s with the Satanic Panic stuff. And because of what happened to James Bernardo, the other 12-year-old, and because my sister was a fanatic who had certain involvements in Massachusetts organized crime, And Massachusetts was at the center of the technique, the criminal technique of using satanic accusations and allegations as cover for being able to get away with murder and other crimes as well. This is what the Satanic Panic was all about. Dale Griffiths and these other people who were, you just don't know. Some of it was with a good intention, but they were like uneducated, wanted to present themselves as better than they were, calling yourself a former police chief when in fact you had, passed out a few parking tickets. Tammy Mathis, failed her college course in she said that she did what she didn't like was she had to ride the patrol car as part of her course. It was like, work study points. And you could put that down in your resume when you graduated that you had done actual police work. So then you could get hired somewhere. That's a pretty good plan, as it goes. But as she went, she claims it was just because she didn't like it. I mean, she probably did something stupid. And she did work after she left college, she did work in the Indiana correctional system, and she was fired for stalking a coworker. And I know that because when she showed up, to return to the beginning of this live stream, she had come into that chat alongside this guy who worked for Steve Hassan. The guy was named Brian Birmingham. And I think he still has a channel. It's not very active, but he still has a channel in YouTube, and you can see that he was into the whole anti-cult stuff, which is part of what Dale Griffiths was using as his sales point. He was against satanic cults. Steve Hassan is against independent Christian cults or groups, calling them cults. And so basically, this is how I got onto Terry Joyce's radar. And she's claiming that this Tamara Wolf. Now, Tamara Wolf, as I say, had contacted me when she thought there was a case. And I said, no, I'm not suing the university, and, I don't have to explain why. I mean, common sense. You've got to be Elon Musk and have his money and also nothing else to do in life but fight with these people in court if you're going to sue a major organization like the University of Massachusetts. And particularly when there's crooked cops involved, so the thin blue line of cover-up is going to come into play. You've got to really decide, is it really winnable? And I decided at one point that simply mentioning that they have problems and letting it go, leaving it in the Lord's hands was the best I could do, and that's what I've done. So Tamara Wolf, according to Terry Joyce, Tamara Wolf sent her this clip and told her she should talk to me because she was doing work on the MK Ultra, which connects back to David Schroeder and the publishing group. They were claiming that there was satanic ritual abuse and it was also MK Ultra. Now, this is where it gets bizarrely interesting. The publisher, Neil Brick, is, he's not as professionally presented in terms of having a wide media range of network as Steve Hassan. I don't think that Neil Brick has ever been on like major TV shows like Dr. Phil, which Steve Hassan, I believe, has. But Neil Brick was definitely working, does still work with him. Neil Brick claims to be working for people who he calls Manchurian candidates, people who have been trained, and it's getting to the point where it's obviously charlatan, because anyone much younger than me couldn't have been part of MK Ultra because MK Ultra was essentially closed down in the 1970s. And a lot of the stuff that happened in the 1980s was kind of like the aftermath of that was being carried on by people who found themselves having to go freelance after the Army and other American agencies were told to stop messing around with stuff like MK Ultra. And the Satanic Panic, I believe, did come directly out of that. So there's like all of these things have one toe in the truth, okay? So Neil Brick latched on to something that's real. Dale Griffiths latched on to something that's real. Satanic crime is real. The best way for the crooks, the criminals, to get away with it is to get people to believe that as soon as you characterize a crime as having any satanic element in it, then it's not real. Okay? So some professional, very intelligent people found that it was a good idea to exploit unprofessional, incredibly stupid people like Terry Joyce. Get them to go public and create all this stuff. When they see somebody speak up, the mother of a young woman who was killed on a university campus, they see somebody like me speak up, they know they can't really shut us up. The facts are obvious. All they can do is get people not to look at the facts, or to look at the facts and think it's something else. Just confuse them. That's all they can do. And they're very good at that. So Tamara Wolf was mentioned by Terry Joyce I think she even says so in that interview itself, which she does have up somewhere. It was in Rumble for a while. And what she's claiming today is that somehow or other I just appeared, and somehow or other I just appeared with Thomas Schoenberger. Thomas Schoenberger is somebody who's been a target of this criminal ring for a long time because he at one point was actually part of it. He at one point, back in 2016, 2017, he was involved with the puzzle games. And he continued. Puzzles there's a lot of people that write and publish puzzles. They are a business. Terry Joyce knows that because she's promoting another game, actually someone you can call a satanic game creator, a guy named Jerry Avalos. And just put Jerry Avalos, Avalos, into Google search. Jerry with a J. You'll see his videos come up with him speaking about the same stuff Terry Joyce promotes all the time, is the MK Ultra, remote viewing, astro traveling, all the New Age garbage. And that's like one step, half a step removed from the satanic stuff. People that are into that stuff claim they got nothing at all to do with the satanic stuff. And most of them probably are telling the truth when they say that. But all of it adds up to discrediting anyone who says, hey, this is what happened to my daughter. And a lot of it was put in place by Neil and the publishing company that published David Schurter's book. Now, here's something else about these people. I was familiar with them when my daughter was still alive. I was familiar with them because, as I said, this is organized crime, and organized crime has a long history. My family has a history with organized crime going back probably a couple generations when I finally figured out what some of my father's union buddies were up to. It's like, yeah, okay, we're talking the real deal here. And the one who hired, the relative who hired Steve Hassan, it's because Steve Hassan's anti-cult movement is the cover movement to harass discredit, and eliminate potential witnesses. Now, they felt like they were satisfied that I had been eliminated when I left Massachusetts, moved to Texas, and made it clear I just didn't give a damn about anybody. Earning my living as a waitress and nursing home diaper changer for years, a cook, just doing all kinds of menial manual jobs because as an artist, that was the only way to protect my integrity. And I could continue as an artist independently of that, which is what I have done all my life. So as far as these people in Massachusetts, oh, well, yeah. Who's gonna listen to her, especially when my sister, who's a successful corporate executive, was lying about me anyway. But my daughter chose not to leave Massachusetts. And when she went into the psychology program and was not cooperating with the family, they got paranoid. And in 2024, if you think I'm exaggerating or fluffing something about the family, look up 2024 school committee woman, I forget what the title is, but my niece, Veronica Fenton, my niece, attacked a school committee woman. My niece herself was on the same school committee in Massachusetts, 2024, very recently. And it was over a challenge to the DEI money laundering system. A conservative school committee woman, the name escapes me, asked at the meeting, one of their conferences, asked to put on the agenda that they had to talk about their policies on DEI and girls' sports teams, because they had to have a policy. She didn't even say what the policy should be, so she wasn't even advocating. She just said, we need to think about this. And my niece, who was on the board of an organization in Lenox, Massachusetts, Lenox, one N, that distributes money to schools for DEI. That's why she was on the school committee. She attacked that woman and got away with it. And it was in the Berkshire Eagle newspaper. And I have a video. I'll try to find the link and throw it into the comments. But if you look through videos from about 4 or 5 months ago, I have one. And it's in my Twitter page as well. And that's what I'm saying. It's an established family. Before that, family history, go back to the 1980s, 1981. Double homicide in Lee, Massachusetts. 7 young men were charged in the murders of 2 young men. The 2 young men who were murdered was Barry Griffiths Jr., whose father was a union steward at GE. The other one, Richard Retzel. His father worked at the racetrack down in Litchfield, Connecticut, just south of the border up there. The 7 included my nephew, the late Joseph Burke III, whose mother is the relative. My sister is the one who hired Steve Hassan to shut me up when I wasn't even speaking at the time. I had no interest in pulling the family down or washing dirty laundry in public. I just want to live my life. And I was trying to get my daughter out of Massachusetts, but she had friends and she had gone to school there. She just didn't see the point of leaving. And they killed her. Steve Hassan runs the squad of cover-up to make sure that no one's when they know they want somebody dead, then what they do is they hire Steve Hassan to send trolls in real life as well as online after these people, so that the person gets known as somebody like David Schroeder, a nutcase who's always yelling and screaming that somebody's after him and da 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 da, and you don't pay any attention, da 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 da. And then if they end up dead, it's like, well, anyone could have killed him because he had so many people mad at him. Right? So you got to think about these things and how they work. And that's how organized crime in the United States work. It's all very corrupt. And it's why Terry Joyce is doing what she's doing. It's who's paying her. Now, she's been talking about me all of a sudden. She's been trying to claim that I am somehow connected with this character, these people that ran a program called Camelot. Manchurian Candidate crap. Neil Brick being in Massachusetts, that little cult. They run all the targeted individuals, the tinfoil helmet, microwave, my neighbor's aiming microwaves at me kind of stuff. There's half the stuff that you hear David Schroeder go on about comes from the fact that he was picked up by these people who recognized that he was a family member, the stepson of somebody who was charged in the Franklin Credit Union child abuse case, where some businessmen in Omaha, Nebraska were working with some people at the Catholic orphanage called Boys Town. Everyone's familiar with Boys Town. It was in a movie with Frank Sinatra when we were kids. We used to always send charity money to Boys Town. It was one of the charities we had to collect a few dollars and send to. Well, it turns out that these men in Nebraska, who, as far as I know, were not Catholic, but they were using boys, and of course there was at least one priest aware of it, as boy prostitutes from there. And it's a court case, it's a criminal case, you can look it up, Franklin Credit Union. And of course there were a number of people were arrested, and David Schroeder is related to at least one of them. He was himself a young teenager at the time. And he wrote a book talking about his childhood in that kind of family. He committed some crimes himself as a teenager, so it was treated in the juvenile corrections. But he talks about those crimes. He comes clean about everything and explains what it's like. And today, he's dedicated himself in his YouTube channel, and he has a blog, and he has at least one book still on sale you can buy it. Down the Rabbit Hole is what it's called. It's very interesting when you start looking at Terry Joyce, because she come along after this. Okay, he published that book, Down the Rabbit Hole, around sometime close to 2012, because that's when 2012 was when he was giving lectures at conferences organized by the publishing company. And my only contact, or my reason for having contact with David Schroeder, was simply that in connection with my family, a Captain Thomas White, a Massachusetts state police captain, he was also involved with Dale Griffiths at the time of James Bernardo's death in the 1990s. I knew Captain White in the late 1990s. Okay? Bernardo died in 1988. Griffith's books and his activities were all through the 1990s. I think the Memphis 3 case was the early 1990s. In the late 1990s, I was actually working with Captain White and some other people in Massachusetts on organizing police to be able to handle satanic abuse cases with solid forensic approach. Captain White was trying to correct the problems that Dale Griffiths was creating. Captain White was also investigating certain gang issues, and he was particularly looking at a connection between child abuse, animal torture rituals where it was drawn into satanic ritual activity, that animal cases are not necessarily criminal, especially back then in the 1990s. Nowadays, it would be pretty quickly, if somebody abused an animal, they could be charged criminally. But back in the 1990s, it was just like, it really wasn't that big of a deal. It had to be really weird to result, or really severe to result in criminal charges. And Captain White was investigating cases where he was finding that the animal torture cases, that his specialty was animal torture. It was a new specialty. Like I said, at the time, the law didn't take it seriously, which meant the police didn't take it seriously. But it was changing, and the state police had established a need for training. And Captain White, one of the things he was doing, he was a criminal scene analyst. They call it CSI now, crime scene investigator. But they called it an analyst at the time. And his special interest was cases that involved animal torture. And they were finding in the Boston area, the gang in question, the international gang, was the Colombian cartel, the cocaine cartel, connected to the Clinton administration. And the gangs, the Colombian gangs, had taken over the Boston streets. The police were picking up cases where animal torture was being found. They would leave animal parts along with occult threats. And it was basically just gang intimidation. It's how I mean, if a bunch of racist crackers want to take over a black neighborhood, they might burn a cross and have a few people run around in white hoodies, right? If Antifa wants to take over a neighborhood, they'll run around in black bloc clothing and red and black flags and throw a few Molotov cocktails through store windows. Gangs identify themselves. Well, these Colombian gangs, were using animal torture. And Captain White was getting involved with the connection to, they were recruiting children into the drug thing. They were also moving into the school system, which they now control through the DEI program. Track back in this live stream a little bit. Didn't I just mention a niece, Veronica Fenton, a Massachusetts lawyer, or former lawyer, I think she was disbarred, who was a school committee woman who attacked another school committee woman for questioning DEI. And by the way, Veronica Fenton was also on the board of the Bridge, BRIDGE. I don't know what it all stands for, but it's an acronym. It's a funding group, a nonprofit, registered nonprofit, for which she was giving her legal advice, and she was a controlling officer. At the time, she freaked out when her fellow school committee woman said they needed to start looking at what's going on with the girls' sports teams. So you see the professional connection. And plus, I don't have to show screen receipts. Anyone who is halfway the actual investigator can look all this up, because I gave you the names. I gave you the organizations. I'm giving you dates, times, and places. You want to look up Captain Thomas White, the late state police captain? Look up Captain Thomas White Memorial. You'll find an old article by me that was written back in the very early 2000s, but you'll also find other things. And the Animal Control Officers Association in Massachusetts, you'll find independent material from them, because they established a scholarship in his honor after he died. So you see how all of this is part of a very factual, organized crime system that has existed in the United States for many years. So to return to tonight's rant, and why is Terry Joyce going off on me tonight? Why is she dragging my name into stuff I've never ever been associated with? Well, let's return to Terry Joyce and her story. So she's a half-retarded person who managed to get California State College to let her play school with the kids. And she's calling herself a journalist. And she's going after, now she gets involved with this guy, Steve Cambion. He's a New Jersey guy. That's not his real name, by the way. His real name is a Polish name that starts with the letter L. And he's originally blonde. I even think he's wearing a wig, that goth-looking, sideways black, Hitler-esque hairdo that he has. I think it's a wig. But I could be wrong. He could simply have dyed his hair. But originally, he's blonde. He's Polish. Polish-American. But he now runs a Expose the Charlatans channel. And for the most part, he's pretty professional. But he promotes Terry Joyce. And he appeared in some streams with her years ago. Highly questionable with the sex crap. But that was years ago, and I think he took those down. Was it his stream or was it hers? Yeah, it was in his channel. He had they were just talking, they didn't actually show the stuff, but they were laughing and talking about some experiences they had together at some Hollywood parties. So he's out of that background. And God bless him, he's doing some good work, looking at idiots like the reptile guys and David Icke and the, flat earth people, creeps like that. But he promotes Terry Joyce, who's presenting herself as someone who exposes charlatans. She's exposing the super soldier stuff. But she promotes the super soldier. Super soldier are the men who stare at goats crap. She is heavily entangled with the death of Max Spears. All of this harkens back to Neil Brick and his Manchurian Candidate group in Massachusetts that was set up during the 1980s. It was established to work along with Dale Griffiths to pull the legs out from under any kind of critical thinking, rational, forensic evaluation of satanic-related crime, or any kind of crime that, it is at the point now where if somebody kills somebody in common, or common robbery, they snuck into the house to steal something and somebody was home, and so a murder happens, and that's just a common burglary, robbery, murder. But now they know that all they have to do is before they leave, sketch a pentagram on the wall and drop a piece of jewelry that has a skull on it. And the police won't be able to investigate the case because it's going to be all satanic panic crap. That's what they do. It's you don't have to be superstitious to understand what's going on here. It's a system that was put in place partly by the mafia, the actual Don Corleone Godfather Mafia, the Sopranos and all their buddies. Those movies and TV shows are based in real life. As I say, I figured out after a while what my dad's union buddies were up to. I was a union steward myself. But none of that had anything to do with murdering innocent people or getting involved in weird satanic crap. Weird sexual crap. None of it. All this stuff came in with this change in the 80s and 90s where they needed some cover for what was coming down the road, which is where we are today. And Terry Joyce is claiming that, when she first contacted me, okay, I mentioned she had said that she got this clip from Tamara Wolf. And it was bait because she knew I wouldn't contact her. But when she started trying to say like Tamara Wolf was representing me, I had to contact her and say, hey, that woman does not represent me. And I don't know what you're doing, but leave me alone. And do not claim that I have nothing to do with that. Now, at that time, I didn't know what kind of an evil charlatan Terry Joyce was. She kept saying to me, well, I'm a co-host at Cruise Seeker. You know about, and I'm thinking, well, I heard the name. I mean, there was like probably half a dozen channels using some form of the word Cruise Seeker during the early QAnon days. I said, I wasn't sure. And then she explained about it, and I went to look at it, and it was Steve Cambion's channel. And I thought, well, it looks reasonable, and she looked like she was doing a reasonable job there. You know, she was using it for credibility. He allows her to use it for credibility. And I did think there was something strange about it, though, because I said, oh, yeah, I look, you know, very nice. And she says, well, what do you think? You must be upset about all this. And she starts going into the UFO charlatan stuff. And I said, no, I don't know about any of that. I didn't know who Max Spears was. I said, what's a super soldier? It's not a topic that interested me. And because Terry Joyce is, in fact, retarded, she's stupid, she couldn't understand that what she's doing is not necessarily common knowledge outside of her little bubble of UFO following friends. The reptile stuff. I mean, I would see a David Icke thing and I would just move on. I didn't pay attention to all the people that follow that stuff. And I just accepted that as an eccentricity of idiots from California, because most people from California are, in fact, idiots. You know, and even those of them who are my friends know, keyword most, not all. Okay. Anyway, she's since changed her story. She was lying when she said Tamara Wolf. Now, that's why I know this was the game. She lied to say that Tamara Wolf had given her that clip because they already knew that I would feel obligated to say, to dissociate myself. In fact, the clip was given to her by a man who uses the name Nasty Troll Media, who's, as far as I can see, an innocent person whose most unfortunate thing that happened to him in life was that he works with the Hollywood culture. But he's actually a very, very talented and very intelligent, legitimate animation artist who had been doing some kind of discussions with Terry Joyce, because he's always looking for people. This was before AI. You had to find somebody with the right kind of voice to play a character, and he had some idiot characters he wanted Terry Joyce to play because she fit the part. I mean, that's my speculation. Whatever it was, they were talking about possibly Terry Joyce should do some voiceovers for some of Nasty Troll's animations. He was not using that name, Nasty Troll. I'm not using his legal name because he's trying to keep his art brand protected from the damage she's been doing. And he set up the channel Nasty Troll just to basically to attack her, which is not illegal. Okay, when somebody messes with you and you want to put up memes and comedy routines showing what idiots they are, you can say they're attacking you. Yeah, they have every right to. I mean, she's stolen his work and put it behind paywall so she could make money off it. Refused to honor his copyrights. But what had happened when they were being friendly with each other, she had him convinced that she was legitimately interested in the problem of corruption and media and satanic crime. And because I had, after being attacked unexpectedly in my channel by This guy who had worked for Steve Hassan, who I recognized as someone who had harassed my daughter when she was still alive, and Tammy Mathis, a crooked cop from Indiana, that Terry Joyce has put on her show, introducing her as law enforcement, which is seriously criminal fraud. Hold on a second. I'm in the middle of something. I'm busy. Just a second. Just a minute. I'm working. I'm in the middle of something.
I need 2 more quarters now. I came to ask you about a big pizza from the store.
I'm in the middle of a stream.
Oh, okay.
I'll get you the quarters. Just a second.
Do you want half that pizza?
Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
That's what I'm really coming to ask you for.
Here. I don't know. I'm in the middle of a stream.
Yeah, it's in the oven right now. So
Okay.
Come over.
Yeah, I will in a while. Probably 20 minutes. Okay. Where was I? Shit. Oh shit. Okay, I'm back. Where was I? Yeah, so she had the clip. Nasty Troll Media. They were doing these discussions. Well, she can't talk to anyone who has dangly parts without trying to touch those dangly parts. He got kind of upset. She tried to turn everything into something else. And I saw some videos where she was trying to be sultry in trying to appeal to him to be friends with her after he shut off the discussions. But what had happened was, because she had convinced him that she was interested in this topic, he had seen my videos where I did mention what happened to my daughter, and I had to talk about some of the stuff that was going on online, because they were attacking my channel, attacking my quilt business. They were putting up. I mentioned the Newburgh, New York woman who she did live in Texas, and she fled to Oklahoma because we did get the law on her down here in Texas. She put out videos warning people that there were bed bugs in my quilts and stuff like that. I mean, just disgusting stuff. And they were attacking anyone who tried to defend and say, hey, leave this woman alone. She does nice work, and so on. Because that's what I was using the media to sell. And I'm opening up my quilt business again. And if they attack again, well, c'est la vie. I think at this point people know about them. But in 2017, they were still able to get away with it. So anyway, he had seen something, and he had told her, why don't you talk to her? She obviously knows these people are crooked. And so tomorrow, Terry Joyce then used that, claiming it was from Tamara Wolf, not mentioning that it was a clip given to her by somebody else in the business out there in Hollywood. And then I stupidly believed, well, she's kind of stupid, but so are a lot of people. But I thought she was legitimate. And I went on with her, and then it turned out she was working together with Colleen Carr's group. A woman named Clovis Harmon and another one named Brenda Becker, who were involved with Tamara Wolf and the courtroom grift, getting people to sue each other so they could make money off it. Just all that crap that Terry Joyce is into with all her lawsuits and lies. And now apparently she's calling David Schroeder's sheriff's office up there in Nebraska, where he does his several times a week YouTube rants. And I mean, I'm saying YouTube rants, but he's talking he's talking the truth about things, except that he kind of gets, I don't know. I don't really watch him regularly. I occasionally glance, especially when Terry Joyce starts talking about stuff. But he's oh, where was I? I'm losing my train of thought here. Anyway, this whole thing with what's going on with this. Yeah, oh yeah, she's attacking David Schroeder because in his life as a journalist himself in that field, he's had something to do with some of these people that do the MK Ultra crap. Well, that's his background. He comes out of Neil Brick's publishing house. Dale Griffiths, the Titanic Panic publishing house, was part of that. Terry Joyce is part of that. Now, Terry Joyce is claiming that there's extortion going on because Dave Schroeder just put up a video saying that a woman named Sarah Rachel Adams offered him $5,000 to attack Terry Joyce. Sarah Rachel Adams is another one of these criminals that's involved with, they're involved with the death of Max Spears. They're involved with the death of Isaac Cappy. Those are people associated with the Hollywood Satanic Panic Manchurian Candidate MK Ultra stuff, which Terry Joyce is 100%, her whole career is part of that. And she's dragging my name into it. And they also keep attacking this guy, Thomas Schellberger, that I mentioned earlier, and everyone knows about him. Because, there's no secret, and he won't deny it, that at one point he didn't really see what was wrong with these people. He had a little group together with some other guys where they were going to do internet marketing, reputation marketing, and he thought they were going to try and correct some of the troll problems, but in fact they quickly became trolls. And then when he saw what was going on, he quit. He tried to quit. He walked away from it, disbanded the company. His part of the company disbanded. They ended up in court cases where they were calling him in as a witness, and they didn't like it because he was telling the truth about what was going on. And as Terry Joyce herself admits, there's a tangle of lawsuits that came out of that. And Terry Joyce is one of the people that's still part of that, that's trying to exploit it. And it's getting to the point now where so many years down the road, she's taking people like me and claiming that I have something to do with people like her Hollywood friend, Sarah Adams. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. You got to really look at this. David Schroeder just made a video saying Sarah Adams offered him $5,000 to attack Terry Joyce. And he said, and he was mad. He says, she's going to do that kind of thing. I'm going to tell her, you just send me the money first, and then we'll talk. Which sounds like a clever, sarcastic way to deal with it. But if he was actually taking $5,000 from anybody to attack anybody, he wouldn't be making videos pulling down the person who offered him the money. Terry Joyce is now making a video not attacking Sarah Rachel Adams, for allegedly offering that money. No. Instead, she attacks David Schroeder, and she says it's extortion. And this is where the retarded part comes in. Extortion doesn't involve offering people money. It involves taking the money. Capiche? Anyway, long time to get to that punchline, and I was surprised that several of you actually sat through the interruptions there. I swear, my neighbors really don't understand the whole live stream thing. I'm not sure what they think I'm doing. But I did just have an offer for pizza, so I think I'm going to go take my neighbor up on his offer for pizza. And y'all, just invest in popcorn. That's my advice. Invest in popcorn, put your feet up, and enjoy the show because 2026 is going to be a blockbuster. Denise Matteau, over and out. And thank y'all for being here. And I still can't find the button to shut this off. Oh, there it is.